John chapter 19, verse 28. Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so that the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. And a jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Several years ago, there was in the Thames, similar to a ferry disaster that we've heard of now, the Marchioness, which was a disco boat, sank in the Thames. And many people, I think about 60 people were drowned. At the time, I was working with a young guy, not the top flyer, good person, not many people would know who he was. He was at that disco that night on the boat. And as the boat was lilting, with a raging water in between a chasm, on the one side was safety, and on the other side was assured drowning. And there was a woman and a child on this one side, and he saw that they couldn't get over. And he laid himself across this gap, called in the newspapers a human bridge, to allow the woman and the child to literally walk over him to safety. When Jesus said, it is finished, he did not mean, I am finished. A few days later, 3 days later, he rose again from the dead. What he did mean was that the work that he had been asked by the Father to do was finished. What was that work? That work was to build a bridge between sin and safety, to form a bridge across this raging cauldron, this gorge of rushing water, the power of sin that cut us off from God. The reminder that the bridge is still in place. On the one side, our transgressions, the things that we've done wrong, the things we haven't done, the shame we feel, the anger we express, the greed we can't get rid of. And on the other is the safety of a relationship with Jesus Christ, or with the Father and with the Son. Sin tears at our relationship with God. But Jesus became one of us. You might remember a song sung by Joan Osborne some time ago. What if God were one of us? Jesus became one of us to make that bridge. She goes on to say, just a slob like one of us. Well, I don't much care to be regarded as a slob, but then I don't much care to be regarded as a sinner. Jesus became a slob or a sinner, cut off, just like one of us, to take the sin of the world upon himself. We don't like the word sin, do we? We prefer to invent something like a mistake. I've made a mistake. I made a wrong choice. But a mistake is something I might have done, maybe told someone else, maybe on my own. But a sin is a rebellion against God. It's the breach of a relationship with God. And the key part of that nature of sin for us is, for our age, I would simply say is this: we want to go it alone. In Isaiah chapter 53, which looked forward to the cross, We read, all we like sheep have gone astray. We've gone every one to his own way. That is what cuts us off from God, that we have gone every one to his own way. It's no coincidence that Frank Sinatra's I Do It My Way is the most important, most often used funeral music. We want to celebrate our lives. We say we were independent. We went our way. But sin isn't something that God hates. And yet in Jesus, he looks at what we've done. He looks at our shame, and he takes that shame upon himself. He makes a bridge. He takes the beautiful, makes it into brutal. The rough edges of our disobedience become the smooth building blocks of life. Jesus became wasted for us. You may say, well, what a waste of a life, a young person. But he was wasted for you and for me. He gave it all and said it was finished. But remember this. It is finished does not mean he was finished. You may have come to a stage of your life, a phase, a time, when you say, this part of my life is finished. It doesn't mean you're finished. The end of your phase is not the end of your destiny. The end of a dream could start at the start of something that is finished. The end of a time of life is not the end of your destiny. This is a strange kingdom where Jesus could come and form a bridge, and the only bridge that takes us from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light, from sin to safety, just like that man lying across. That is the example for you and for me. We lay our lives down as Jesus did his. And when he said, it is finished, it was the great cry that the work that he'd been called to do, that the Spirit of God had reminded him of at every step of his life, was now completed.